Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion today, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience of SmithWeekly, including Jeff S., Jared W., Mike P., and Luke A. We have returning guests on the program today. Mr. Darin Labrenz, Vice President, Exploration, and Mr. Adrian O'Brien, Director of Marketing, are with us, representing Red Sea Resources. Red Sea Resources is a privately held gold exploration junior focused on greenfield exploration in southern Egypt, with exploration grounds in eastern central Egypt nearby the existing Sukari mine, a large-scale gold mine operation that is inland off the coast of the Red Sea. The company also has exploration grounds in the north and also to the south near the border with Sudan. The company intends to list on a public stock exchange in the future, and you can learn more about the company via its website, redsearesources.com. Darin, Adrian, welcome back. It's good to have you guys back on the program.
Thanks, Andrew. It's a real pleasure. I'm looking forward to having a conversation. It's been a little while, and we've been very active out in Egypt and have a lot to talk about. So, as I say, I'm looking forward to having a conversation around it.
Yep, absolute pleasure to be here again, Andrew, and echoing Darin's sentiments. Nice to get a chance to catch up and cover some of the new work that Darin's hard at work on in the field and the new discoveries he's made and all that stuff. So it's going to be a good one today.
Thank you, guys. Always appreciate you guys coming back to update. And it's been just over a year since we had the last update. And of course, lots of progress has been made in 2024, which we'll talk about here in a moment on the project front. And then also just Red Sea, over the last few years has continued to progress in what I see as positive fashion out there. And there's not too many peers to compare to, but it seems like you guys are leading the pack at this point with Egypt exploration work. But before getting to updates, Darin, I'd like to get your thoughts on gold mining development and exploration sector as things stand now. We're coming into the end of the year. Just give us your thoughts as far as how you see the whole sector at this time, gold price, of course, sentiment for the junior sector, which is where we are, and how you see conditions shaping up going into 2025.
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously we're in an environment right now where we have gold prices at, the strongest they've ever been, just shy of 2,800 US dollars per ounce, which bodes really well for, the future of gold mining and gold exploration. But we haven't really seen that translate into the, junior sector. I don't think share prices really show the appreciation in gold price. I think there's a lot of room to move there. And at the same time, with respect to raising funds to move projects forward, it's never been easy, and it still isn't easy. So, despite the strength in gold price, it's still a challenging market. But at the end of the day, with the right people and the right properties, the right opportunity, there's money out there, and I think we have all that. We definitely got the right people in place here to move our projects forward in Egypt. Red Sea Resources are well positioned that way with a lot of technical expertise and experience in these types of geological environments. As we'll get into in the call, Egypt itself has got fantastic geology. When you look at the broader the Arabian-Nubian Shield, there's been a lot of discoveries over the last 10 to 20 years, but for the large part they exist outside of Egypt, and that really reflects the lack of exploration that's been conducted, at least modern exploration within that environment. So, fantastic gold price. I think we've got a lot of room to move from a share price appreciation perspective to catch up. And I think we do have the right team and the right rocks here and the right opportunity to really have some success here in a brand new environment. So, I think we're fairly well positioned here.
Darin, thank you for that. Adrian, what are your thoughts on that?
It's pretty tough to top what Darin just said. I mean, I think the reality is, it is a market that's looking for new things and new places. I think that the public is waiting for something new and big and exciting to stoke their imagination and remind them why the exploration business is so exciting and what is on the horizon. And certainly gold is one of those things. This is one of the two or three metals right now, or one of the two or three entities that I think most people are focused on. Copper probably being the other. And to be in a completely brand spanking new jurisdiction where, aside from one major commercial mine, there has not been any other real measurable success. To be in a position to be the first mover and be that group and have a team like we have, and somebody like Darin leading the way, particularly from a geological perspective, this is super exciting, and I think maybe just what the market's waiting for.
And guys, how are things going in Egypt for the company? It's, as I said, it's been about a year since we last spoke for updates. And of course, since then, there's been regional conflict to the northeast. Talk about any difficulties in continuing operations in Egypt, or if all is normal based on your experience there these past few years. And also, really, why should we be looking at Egypt? Why should investors take a look at Egypt? Adrian, why don't you take that one away?
You know what? Actually, I'm going to hand the reins on that one to Darin. Reason being, he's the guy spending all his time on the ground. He can give you a real view from somebody that is literally basically living there. He's seeing it firsthand, day in and day out, and I think he can really speak to what it feels like to be on the ground there in Egypt. Darin, why don't you take a swing at that?
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. Andrew, really the feeling on the ground within Egypt is much the same today as it was, a year ago a year and a half ago when I first started traveling into the area. While there is recognizably a lot of conflict in the region, Egypt itself, I think, is saying all the right things and doing the right things, and life continues more or less as normal within the country. Still very supportive environment for conducting work, and at the end of the day, remains a very exciting place to be. As I indicated in the introduction, the geology there is fantastic. There's tremendous opportunity. You've got a world-class mine located just kilometers away from our central license, and the fact you've got a 15 million ounce deposit in Egypt, and it's the only modern mine within the country. These things just don't occur in isolation, and so I think from the standpoint of working in Egypt, it's much as it was before, well supported by people, infrastructure, and the opportunity is real, and we continue to move things forward as one might expect.
Adrian, any follow-up comments on that?
No, I think that absolutely drives it home. I think Darin is, as I said, he's there. He's basically living there and living and breathing what's going on in the country, and I think that's dead accurate. I think he's right on the money.
Appreciate the comments on that, Darin and Adrian as well. Adrian, on this one here, why don't you discuss briefly your thoughts on the significance, because this plays back into Egypt as a jurisdiction for gold mining among natural resource exploration, but talk about the significance here of the Sentiment Anglo deal that's in process right now for the Sukari mine.
Absolutely. And I think really to understand the significance of it, you have to understand, first off, that Egypt is one of the last places in the world that has a vast greenstone belt. Greenstone belts typically are one of the most common geological environments for very large gold systems and regional gold systems. And when you look at Egypt as a whole, it's one of the only places left on the planet that hasn't been drilled off, that hasn't been systematically explored. And one of the few areas that has been was Sentiment Sukari mine. And so when you look at Egypt historically, it wasn't really the easiest place to get into for exploration. You had a situation where, Sukari was essentially under the old Egyptian law, which led to 51% ownership by the Egyptian government. That's obviously prohibitive for any country or any company coming into the country. And so really the only company and the only project that was moved forward. So what did Sentiment develop at Sukari? 15 plus million ounces that was producing, give or take, 600,000 ounces a year at an average grade of around 1.29 grams. That is an absolute monster of a deposit, super impressive. And they rebuffed an offer from Endeavour back in 2019 of $2.5 billion for that asset, and now took a similar offer from Anglo at around $2.5 billion, give or take. Depending on currency you convert that in, we'll call it a $3 billion offer. And that now sees Anglo moving into Egypt. So how significant is that? That's the only commercial mine in the entire country. Is it the only commercial mine or the only big deposit that's going to be found? Absolutely not, in my view. It makes no sense that you could have an area like this. If you compare it to other gold districts in the world, it is just simply not feasible that there are not many other deposits in the belt, in the country, in this prime geology. So now it becomes a case of who's going to get in there, who has the best ground, who has the best opportunity for a big transformational discovery in Egypt. Who's going to be the first mover? That's key. But this is a groundbreaking move by Anglo. It brings Anglo into the country in a big way. And it's exciting. I mean, this tells you how interested people are in Egypt. It tells you that big companies are interested in Egypt. And really now it comes down to the very small handful of juniors that are operating in Egypt, including Red Sea, and their ability to make serious discoveries and be the first mover in the belt. But this is a huge move for Egypt, and really exciting from our perspective.
Yeah, I think it's interesting in the sense too that you also have a couple small juniors there, as you mentioned, including Red Sea, but also some of the mid tiers and majors flowing in there besides Anglo as well. Whether you have Barrick or B2 Gold had some grounds there as well. So it's very interesting as to the interest level in Egypt. Darin, any thoughts on the transaction from your end?
Yeah, I think Adrian spoke well to it. I would add, when you look at Anglo Gold, you've got a multinational senior producer coming into Egypt, so I think it's a real vote of confidence in the future of Egypt. In Sukari, which was essentially the acquisition. In Sukari itself, you've got an operating mine that's at this point it's mature. It's been in operation for 13 years. I believe it's got another 13 years of mine life on the books right now. But I really think, Anglo is looking at this as an opportunity to acquire again, a tier one asset in the Sukari mine, but also a portfolio of exploration assets that Centamin held largely around the Sukari mine itself and focused on the controlling structure there, which is the Nugra Shear Zone. It bodes well for us. I mean, you get a brand new operator in country. They're serious about Egypt. They're serious about moving that mine forward, but they're also serious about exploration. I think it brings more eyes onto what we're doing on the ground there and more opportunity for Red Sea Resources. So I think it's a fantastic transaction for Anglo. It's going to be fantastic for Egypt and for operators within Egypt.
Darin, thank you for the comments on that. Well, let's move into Red Sea. First, Adrian, why don't you give us an update here on the capital structure of the company, shares outstanding, last financing price, the cash on hand, and how far you see that carries the company given at least the current projection of activities, and of course the key shareholders on the roster.
If you look at Red Sea, and we've been around for a few years now, specifically focused in Egypt, private company, and where we sit today, we've raised a total to date of just under 7.5 million. So we've issued just under 80 million shares. And looking at the different kind of points where we've raised money, the last significant raise was at 15 cents. And of course, that was to give Darin the money he needed to get out in the field and start to round up these discoveries that he's been making. So it's critical for us at this point. We're keeping our overhead as low as possible and really making sure that Darin is fully funded to just attack these targets and do as much development work pre-IPO as we can. And so we raised a fair bit of money at 15 cents. We raised just under 3 million. Darin's been hard at work in the field with that. We raised another, give or take, 2.5 million at 20 cents fairly recently. And we're currently doing another 2.5 plus at 20 cents. And so, of course, none of this has come with a warrant. These are all just straight shares. And, in terms of the roster of investors, it's well distributed. I think largely founders and directors and kind of our own close group here that have really supported this project at this early stage, with a goal of getting this to a very significant IPO, and having a drilled bona fide discovery in hand. And Darin's well on his way. He's been doing an immense amount of work in the field, attacking both Luxor and Oasis, and some work at Raw as well, but Oasis in particular. And this is the strategy. It's raise enough money to get us to that IPO phase, and to be able to come into the IPO with a good geological idea of just how big these systems or these targets are, with some big numbers in hand, and to be able to really show people how significant these discoveries are, to get as impressive an IPO price underneath us as we can, and really come out swinging at a high valuation. And so, again, raising money still at 20 cents, with our eye on, let's call it 2.5 to 5 million. And that will get us through the drilling plans that Darin has, and get us to where we need to be.
And just looking out a little bit further here, Adrian, just as far as what you said here, based on the numbers that you gave, with the capital that's being currently raised and that's on hand, do you see that this is the potentially final round before an IPO round? Do you guys think that could change? There might be another round of private capital to be raised depending on results. Just talk about that from the standpoint of potential investors who might be listening in here, who might want to contact the company to participate in any financing at this point pre-IPO.
Yeah, I think the idea right now is that this round we're completing should be the round that carries us to the IPO. Predominantly putting money in the ground, right? The goal here is to focus on geology, focus on work, be in the field, and get really great data put together, and let Darin do all the work he can. He's doing, as I said, a really fantastic amount of work. He's making serious, significant discoveries, and developing these targets into really tier one exploration targets, and targets that are proving to be super exciting. And so, just in terms of capitalization now, I think this will likely carry us right to the IPO. That's why I say, we're looking at 2.5 to 5 million. I think we want to make sure that we bring enough money in the door to position ourselves to go into that IPO, and then go into the IPO at as high a valuation as possible. And I'm going to throw that over to Darin too. Maybe Darin, you want to add your thoughts to that? As the guy that's steering the ship here, both geologically and otherwise, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, you're exactly right. We spoke at the outset about some of the challenges in the sector for raising capital to move projects forward, and that's not that's not something that just translates to public companies. It's even, I would argue, more difficult for a private company. And the fact that we've been able to attract a diverse set of shareholders and investors, and raise funds to move the project forward, really speaks to the exploration opportunity that we see in front of us here right now. It's not many private companies that would move forward to a drill program prior to going public, but based on the results that we've seen on the ground thus far on all three of our licenses, to be quite honest, we think there's a tremendous opportunity here to drill a discovery hole and come out of the gates swinging. So I think it's an exciting time. The funds we have in front of us right now will carry us through a drilling program at Oasis, which we're lined up and ready to go on, and we'll likely initiate some drilling on Raw as well before the initial public offering. So I think it's an exciting time to be investing in Red Sea, and as I say, I think that there's real potential here as we move forward.
Why don't we talk exploration updates now, Darin? I'm going to come back to you here. I'd like to start with Luxor first. That's, of course, nearby the Sukari mine and, of course, Marsalam. Darin, what work has been done this year on the project, the results so far at Luxor, and what is planned next to advance this project? And then, of course, we'll jump into the other projects in a moment.
Sure. I think when we last spoke, we talked about Luxor and our, I don't know if we call it the island target or the WAM target on Luxor. It's an area that's seen some illegal mining activity, and really quite exciting based on the work we had done. That excitement has grown over the course of the last year. We really advanced our geological understanding at at Luxor, and we're able to put it into better context geologically with respect to what we see within the Central Eastern Desert. So I'll just maybe step back for a bit and talk more broadly. When you look at Luxor itself, it does sit in an area within the Eastern Desert that we describe as the Central Eastern Desert, and it has geological features across a pretty broad area. The Central Eastern Desert is the host to the Sukari mine, which lies to the east of our Luxor license. And when you look at Sukari, and we think about why does it exist, and what processes were in place to create a deposit that's 15 million ounces, and so number one is structure. There is a large shear zone that wraps through the Central Eastern Desert. It's called the Nugrus Shear Zone. It's a splay off that underlies the Sukari deposit, and it was really the feeder for the mineralization within Sukari. When you look more at the nuts and bolts of Sukari, it's hosted within a granitic body. That granitic body is surrounded by a sea of gabbro-diorite rocks, and mineralization itself is controlled by veins and veinlets that really it's the density of those veins that drives the large bulk tonnage operation that you see there today. And so if I shift focus now across to our own Luxor project, you can trace that Nugrus shear zone across the Central Desert, and it bisects the Luxor project. So right away, we're in the right spot. We've got major shear cutting through the project, and with that shear, we have the potential to drive mineralization. Our WAM target itself, which sits in the south central part of the Luxor license area, it shares a lot of similarities with Sukari. So not only is it located just off the Nugrus shear zone, it's hosted in a granitic body. Mineralization is driven by a series of north-south veins that span a tremendous footprint. Alteration style is similar. We're surrounded by gabbro-diorite. So you just go through a checklist comparing all the attributes that describe the mineralization and the mine itself at Sukari, and you can say the same thing on our WAM target. When you get into the details and look at WAM, we've now established mineralization through work on the ground. So this is rock sampling, walking across the surface and collecting samples in the veins themselves, as well as the surrounding wall rock. We've established a footprint of mineralization that is 3.5 kilometers by 2 kilometers. Absolutely astonishing when you think about the size of the footprint on the ground. And when I talk about that footprint, I'm not talking about just seeing veining. I'm talking about actual results that have been returned from rocks collected at surface. So as an example, you can step out to the west side of the WAM target. We've got a small channel there that's 1 meter at 9 grams per ton. Moving across over 3 kilometers to the east, I've got a grab sample from a vein that runs 83.1 grams per ton. So, we've got strong tenor of mineralization across that entire 3.5 kilometer by 2 kilometer footprint. The individual veins themselves can strike for over 500 meters, so there's great continuity along strike. The density of them is very apparent on the ground, and in fact, you can actually see it from space. So a tremendous target that's in the right geological environment, the right host rocks, and has the right style of mineralization, the right style of alteration. And I think it's a real opportunity here to make a discovery in the same belt that hosts the Sukari mine.
Darin, that sounds pretty good. So to talk just a little bit about what you guys would expect to do here, assuming the capital's there, and I know Oasis, we'll get to Oasis in just a moment because I know that's going to be the focus immediately here, but just talk about what you would expect to accomplish if the capital was available, say in 2025 at Luxor.
Yeah, so we've got plans moving forward for a drilling program on the Luxor license. I've described a very large target that has all the right attributes, but what we don't have is a third dimension to it. And so we've got a drill program that we've laid out there that would go in and define the mineralization to depth underneath the WAM target, and really look at establishing the tenor of mineralization as well as the density of veining that we see, not only along strike, but also in the other dimension with respect to flat veins that we see in some of the cuts that are exposed to surface there. So I would expect a drilling program to commence next year at WAM, and I think there is a real opportunity there to make a large-scale discovery.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that. Adrian, any comments on Luxor before we jump into Oasis?
I mean, Darin has perfectly summarized what Luxor means. I think the big thing is if you're looking at the area we're working, how close we are to Luxor, the work Darin's done to define the target there, the size of the area, the grade, the scale, and just to be perfectly blunt, the geological similarities. Um, if you have Sukari number two, and if you can line up something in that range, um, I mean, that is unbelievably exciting, and it seems that Darin's well on track to that. So, you know, putting a target in place that has size, scale, grade, the right geology, very high grade mineralization, and has never been properly explored until now, but sits on the right structure, the same structure as Sukari, very close to Sukari, and now you have this big move from Anglo sweeping in and taking out Sukari and taking out Sentiment. You know, what does that tell you about the interest in the area? It's clear that groups want to be there, big groups want to be there, and everybody is going to be eyeballing who the next player in the area is to step up and have the next big discovery. And it brings up this first mover advantage, which it seems that right now Red Sea has got wrapped up. I think we have a real chance here to be the next or newest big exciting story in Egypt. Outside of Sentiment, the first exciting story in Egypt, and Luxor is going to be a big part of that.
Adrian, thank you for that. Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. And given its proximity to Sukari, it's definitely one that we're looking forward to seeing what kind of progress happens there and what Darin's able to sort out with exploration and where to put that drill bit on those first couple holes. With respect to Oasis, this is a growing focus for the company and for Darin. Darin, talk up a little bit about this one and take us back just for the audience and to get some context. Take us back to the beginnings of this project. What immediately interested you when you visited for the first time? And talk about the progress to date. And then also, why don't we just talk a little bit about what you would expect to accomplish as well as news on Oasis over the next 6 months or so?
Oasis was a area that when I first visited, it was an exciting play, if you will, when you look at the ground and the exploration opportunity. Once again, we're sitting now in the what's called the southeastern desert. The southeastern desert is predominantly characterized by large northwest shear zones. So you're in a classic shear hosted environment here, and Oasis is certainly no different. On the ground there, when I first visited, you could look at some workings that actually date back to Roman times, and you can see the alteration on the ground. And you just step back, and I remember commenting how you look across, the horizon, you look at the hillside, and you can actually see the alteration stretching out with some scale from those pre-existing Roman workings. So I thought there was an opportunity here with the strong shearing that we see across the property and historic mining, dating back to Roman times, and then the ability to track that mineralization visually from surface, given the exposure that we have within the Egyptian environment. That's certainly no different today. We've advanced things at Oasis tremendously over the course of the last year. It's been a real focus of mine for the last 6 months. I spent most of my time on the ground at Oasis, and things are really coming together well. What we see there is one of these northwest shear zones. It's called the Kashab shear. It's known in literature. It strikes for probably over 80 kilometers across the southeastern desert, and it's known to host multiple gold occurrences along that 80-kilometer trend. When we step into the Oasis project itself, it bisects it perfectly. We've got about 15 kilometers of that shear exposed at surface across the Oasis license. But importantly, we've been able to kind of tie into the context of that shear multiple occurrences, if you will, and put it into a solid geological context. So when you look at the Kashab shear, we have a number of splays. These are faults that trend off from the main shear that are often in these types of environments. These are the focus. These are the areas that allow for fluid flow and deposit formation. And the primary one I'm going to talk to is the Queensblay. So on the west side of the Kashab Shear, we have the Queensblay. It splays off near the bottom of the license area and then trends parallel to the Kashab Shear across the project. The Roman workings I talked to, there's two of them specifically. They both lie on that Queensblay. And as we started to put this kind of context together geologically, we followed the splay out to the north, and lo and behold, made a new discovery. And so we've kind of named these things based on some of the historic queens from Egyptian times. So moving from south to north, we have what we call now our T target. Then we go into the Nefertiti target, and then finally the Cleopatra target. These targets lie along a 10-kilometer trend along that Queensblay, and we've got some pretty darn impressive results of them. I'll maybe start first with the newest discovery, which is the Cleopatra target. Cleopatra, as I say, it's north of north on the Queensblay, brand new discovery, and rock samples collected on surface over the course of the last 6 months have returned fantastic results. So this spans a 3-kilometer strike length. If I start on the south end, I've got rock samples there that run 8.3 grams per ton. Moving about 700 meters north of that, I've got a 10 gram per ton, 6 gram per ton result. Move another 500 meters north of that, and we've got results including 57.8 grams per ton, 38.7, 26.2. You move another 2 kilometers or a kilometer and a half, and you've got another 10 gram sample. Fantastic results along the Queensblay. But stepping back, I just want to highlight the really important thing here is geologically, we understand it. We see it as a splay off that main shear zone. We're now looking for opportunities to form deposits. You're looking for flexures in that shear, intersecting features, areas where it can open up and really allow for the fluid flow to form these large scale deposits. I'll carry on. Stepping to the south in the Queensblay, you've got the Nefertiti target, the T target. These date back to Roman times, but our work there has really expanded the scale of those targets. In Nefertiti itself, we've got mineralization across a 700 by 400 meter footprint, grades running up to 166 grams per ton in rock. And then as we move south to the T target, we've got mineralization on that Queensblay that has returned channel samples of 2 meters at 8.2, 2.5 meters at just shy of 12 grams, and mineralization has been defined across a nearly 2-kilometer footprint again. So fantastic results on the Queensblay. But if you don't mind, Andrew, I'm going to jump across and talk about some of the new discoveries we've made on the east side of the Kashab Shear, and this is where we step into what we call our king targets.
And with that, just talk a little bit about where you would prioritize, put the drill next. This is target rich, it sounds to me, but talk a little bit about what else you guys need to do to be able to really pin down where to put that drill bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's when I look at the east side of the Kashab Shear, and I'm speaking to the king targets in particular, this is an area that has again seen a little bit of illegal mining activity. I visited it on my first trip out to site, and I liked what I saw there. It was complicated. So we saw mineralization lying in veins that were oriented north-northeast. We saw mineralization oriented northwest. We saw flat-lying veins that were running more east-west, and that complexity makes it a little bit more challenging from an exploration perspective, but it also is something you want to see in a target-rich environment. Again, as we've done work over the course of the last year, we've really been able to tie this in a more solid geological model, a more solid understanding. And so what we can say today is that mineralization is, the predominant control here is still that north-northwest trend, which is the Kashab Shear itself. But we've got some influence here between north-south contact between two different rock units, and then we're seeing some east-west late dextral faulting across the area there that's caused these things to open up and created some tension that allows for these flat on echelon or ladder veins, if you want to call them that. So been able to tie this into a bit of perspective. We've taken that original target area and we've expanded it significantly. When I say that, I mean it's truly amazing some of the results we've returned in the king target areas. The initial area, we've got channel samples there, 9.9 meters at 25 grams per ton. I mean, this is a channel cut across a cut that was put in by some of the legal mining activity. That speaks to the real continuity of high-grade mineralization. The fact that we're just shy of 10 meters at 25 grams in rocks collected at surface is truly amazing. The footprint has been expanded significantly to the north, and so we've got a brand new discovery in the north of what was previously explored, and some of the results we see there have been, again, absolutely fantastic. So you look at a channel across one of these northern cuts, 2.5 meters at 31.5 grams per ton. Individual veins within that run 224 grams per ton, 93 grams per ton. Importantly, when we look at the host rock, it's highly altered. It's mineralized. There's sulfides inside of it, and we've got a 0.5 meter at 15.8 grams per ton that comes from the host rock itself. Another result to the east of that, or west of that, sorry, we've got 3 meters at 26.6 grams per ton. So we're not just now talking about individual rock samples that carry high grade from a high grade vein. We're talking about channel samples that cut across both veins and altered host rock that are returning numbers that are close to an ounce per ton over widths of 2.5 to 3 meters. So absolutely fantastic. I think the key in the entire Oasis license area is that geologically we're starting to understand what the controls and mineralization are. We're able to take that to explain what we're seeing on the ground. We're able to take that to step out and now look for extensions or new occurrences along those geological features. And I think that speaks to the exploration future at Oasis. Also, with the understanding, I feel very confident now about our ability to go in with the drill and start to push these things into the third dimension. So we have got a contract in place with the local drill operator, and we're in the last stages now of finishing up the preparatory work, if you will, for that drill program. I anticipate we will be drilling before the end of this year, and I expect to return some results based on what we're seeing on surface here. The idea will be to step into 2 or 3 of the target areas. On the Queen side, we're going to look to establish mineralization to depth along a couple of the targets that I've described. And then when we look on the King side of the Oasis license, we want to establish the high-grade mineralization that we surface, establish a third dimension to that, and do so across a minimum of a 700-meter strike lengths. I feel very, very optimistic about the potential to make a discovery through our drilling that we're going to conduct here, and I'm very excited about having that drilling initiated before the end of this year.
Darin, thank you for the details on this. Yeah, this sounds very interesting, and I would encourage the audience to take a look or contact Darin or Adrian to get a copy of some of the information that Darin just talked about, so they can provide that to you as well. So I would encourage folks to discuss that because they do have it available. Adrian, anything to add with what Darin has, and then I'll have a few follow-ups.
I think geologically, Darin's the guy to give you the rundown on Oasis. But what I will add is this. When you look at the quality of the 3 projects that we put together for Red Sea, this was 2 years plus of geological reconnaissance that led to the projects we acquired. Of course, these were acquired in bid round in 2021. We viewed these as the top projects to go after. We really thought these were the top blocks. And we went in with a plan of, a hope, obviously, to get all 3. I don't know that we expected it, but we were lucky enough to pull it off. And we ended up with spectacular projects. And Darin is now out there showing the true depth of scale and quality as far as the geology. And these gold grades that Darin's discussing at Oasis are truly, I use the term spectacular, but I don't use that lightly. These truly are spectacular. These are the kind of results that everybody dreams of finding on a new project. And the sheer scale that he's finding at Oasis and building out down here is very large. If you want to look at a comparison, you can look at the Timmins camp or look at Abitibi. Look at any of these big regional gold systems and these big greenstone belts. You're seeing something here that has regional scale. Darin's showing you targets and talking about targets that when you link those together, you've got a 10-kilometer strike length. this is big, this is high grade, and it has scalability. And when you start looking at that, that's the kind. I mean, that's the ultimate type of a target to end up with, and really what we wanted to go in and find. And he's knocking it out of the park. So I think when you're starting to look at these targets and look at what we're accomplishing, we always joke around that Darin's favorite project is the last one he was on, and I think he's the guy that started that. But I think in the case of Oasis has just jumped to a real front runner position with incredible geology and even more incredible scale. So really, really exciting. Like from us internally, from our team, and from our perspective, Oasis is turning out to be just an unbelievable project with huge potential. So we're really excited for the drills to spin there, and Darin to keep on going with this amazing work that he's doing.
Darin, thinking along the lines of comparables, and when you take a look at maybe some of the comparables of mineralization found by, I think there's another junior or two out there in Egypt that might be worthy of looking at some of their information that has been put out. And then also the work that has been done at Sukari for many, many years. Does this line up with what you would expect? And even looking at stuff in Sudan, for example, just over the border. How does this compare upon your initial first impression? Is there really good stuff on surface here? Give us a context for these. These are great surface results, but give us a context for how you look at comparables potentially, or just sampling with other deposit types in the region. And obviously Sukari is the best example, but how do you look at this to get what's really here? I mean, obviously we have to drill it, but how do you feel so far when you look at comparables based on your geologic background in this area?
As you describe, it is early stage and speculative. When I step back and summarize the work that we've done over in the course of the last couple of years, it's really exceeded my expectations. When I first stepped on the ground, I mentioned I could see mineralization at surface, I could see alteration track it across the hills, you could see the right kind of structures, but it really was, a scattering of results and some surface activity from illegal mining activity. But at the end of the day, now what we've done is we've taken the license areas and we've really put a strong geologic context around some of those results, and we've been able to expand and get down to the nuts and bolts here. We're not talking about drilling a soil anomaly. We're not talking about drilling a geophysical anomaly. We're not drilling undercover here. We're looking at things that are at surface. There's limited, virtually no cover on the license areas themselves. So you can see the rocks, you can see the structure, you can see the alteration, and we're able to walk along and trace it and have returned some absolutely fantastic results. So, if you want to look at what the potential is, with respect to the license areas, so when we look at Luxor itself, as I described, it sits in the Central Eastern Desert. It's the same rocks that host the Sukari mine, and even more when we look at our largest, which is one of 8 targets on the Luxor license, the WAM target. It's got the same host rock, the same style of mineralization, the same timing of lithology and mineralization, and it's just off the same structure that hosts the Sukari mine. That in itself is exciting, but now when you step back and realize that we've collected a huge suite of samples across a footprint of 3.5 kilometers by 2.5 kilometers, we've got the footprint to make a major discovery that has all the right attributes. So I think that we're in a really good position at Luxor. Step across to Oasis. When I walked on there, the predominant defining feature was this very pronounced north-northwest shearing. I mean, I would look at this as a big deformation zone, and that's not dissimilar to greenstone belts across the world where you host not just one deposit but multiple deposits. And so when we've put this geological context across it, we now have a shear that runs through the property. We've got multiple splays off it. There's mineralization on those splays. This is not across several hundred meters. We've got multiple targets along a 10-kilometer strike length, and we've turned rock samples that are into the multi-ounce range. So this is a great start for an early stage generative exploration project. What really gets me excited there is, again, the structure, the scale, and also that we're seeing mineralization in the surrounding wall rock. So I see strong alteration, I see sulfide development in the host rock, and I've got channel samples that include 2.5 meters at 31 grams, 3 meters at 26.6 grams. These are not just veins, these are across faces that include veins and host rock. So I think there's a real opportunity there. It's definitely exceeded my expectation. And you step to our Northeastern Desert license, the raw license. We haven't talked about that, but we're again a little bit different geology. It's currents there is polymetallic, so we've got gold results up to 2 ounces per ton. We've got silver up to 600 grams per ton. We've got copper up to 1.6%. We've got lead, zinc, and those numbers are returned across a structure that sits, you know, in strikes about just shy of 2 kilometers and dips shallowly off to the east. So that's also an exciting license, an exciting target, and has the scale again and grade that could potentially develop into a deposit. So all three licenses should see drilling next year, and all three have the potential to make a discovery. So I think we're in a really good position. When you compare it around other projects that I've worked on, this ranks right at the top, and there are virtually very few areas in the world where you can go in and get these kind of results and on licenses that have never ever seen a single drill hole. And so this is it's brand new, it's fresh, it's exciting, it's the right rocks, got the right scale, we've got grade, and I think a real opportunity.
Darin, thank you for that. Yeah, I think that to be able to come in with modern exploration technology and techniques to an area that have not seen that before, I think is a very positive feature amongst the artisanal features that are there and the illegal mining features that are already there to help provide a little bit of context outside of obviously your expertise as well. So it sounds like Oasis is obviously the priority project in the immediate term, and then Luxor will have more follow up, and then of course Raw. Darin, talk two other things for me here for a moment, and of course, Adrian, jump in here if you'd like. Just with respect to you guys looking to expand any license areas that you want to add to, if it's possible to do that in the next bid round, how that would be looked at from your guys' perspective based on the results that you've gotten so far. That's one, Darin. And then also two, just talk a little bit about the government requirements as far as the upkeep of these licenses, timing, costs, work requirements. Just give our audience a little bit of context, because my guess is there's a fair bit of audience here. Egypt's new. They don't understand some of the requirements to hold the concessions. Just talk about that as well.
Much of the mining exploration law, if you will, here is new. It was established prior to the last bid round, which was in 2020, and really is modeled after West Africa. So you have a period on these licenses where you have to work. There's expenditure commitments, and licenses themselves are granted for initial period of 2 years with a 2-year renewal and a 4-year renewal, and then ultimately, if you establish resources, they transition towards a different type of license and can be held for much longer periods at that point. So there's a system in place that drives people to actually do work, which we are doing, and certainly have the results to continue activity on all three licenses. So it's fairly well established, but it is new. It's something that I think Egypt and the operators within country are still growing into. There is an opportunity for discussion and shaping the path of their new fledgling mining act, if you will, and seeing what works and what doesn't work, and helping bring it to a standard that every operator will be happy to explore. I think we're in good position with respect to the timing required. As I said, the licenses have a renewal period, but we're in the early stages of work in all three licenses, and we've got the results that suggest that we're on the right path for moving them forward.
Just moving on here, guys. So we talked a little bit about Raw. Looks like Raw's third on the priority list essentially here, and that Oasis has a bunch of work that you guys want to get going there, including testing some of those targets that Darin has come up with. There's a lot happening here, and really appreciate you guys going through this, and the results so far are fantastic in there. So looking forward to seeing the drill bit results as you guys get started there to understand what we have below us here. Just with respect to local community work, Darin, tying in with my prior question here, just talk a little bit about the progression on local community relations, of course, maybe some of that local community education and involvement that you guys might be doing at this very, very early stage. So obviously those efforts are fairly small, but then of course, government relations, Ministry of Mines relations to advance these projects really unhindered What kind of work is happening there on the ground?
Yeah, I think with respect to the community, it's interesting when you look at Egypt as a, describe mining activity that dates back to Roman or even prior times. I mean, some of the earliest gold mining, if you will, was in Egypt. Yet you haven't really seen you know, uh, any modern exploration, and that's largely tied to the Mining Act, which has changed recently, and evolution through the bid rounds themselves. I think the opportunity here is to help build an exploration industry. I think the first operators in country are the ones that have the potential to shape that, and with that I mean, building up the in-country expertise and building up the vendor and supporting suppliers and so forth, their capacity to work, and we certainly got a start on that. Uh, One thing I have been impressed with in Egypt is the quality of education, the quality of the people. We've got a fantastic team that's on the ground working, and they've got a real good, solid foundation in the skills that they need to move the projects forward from an exploration perspective. And certainly myself and other experts that we bring in, a big part of the work that we do is really to lend some of our own background and skills and trying to grow the in-country capacity for exploration. So I think they've got a solid foundation there. It is a very strong society. There's good industrial capacity there, so almost everything that we need for our exploration work is available in country, and so that's something that we're really focused on is using the resources of the country to move the project forward so that the value stays in country. So I think that that's probably number one for early stage exploration is to grow the capacity within country and lend some of our exploration knowledge and skills that we've gained in our own work and build out the experiences and skill sets of the individuals in country. I think that's a real focus. When it comes to government relations, the industry is supported by the Egyptian Mineral Resource Authority. There's a number of individuals and geologists within that organization that we maintain communication with, and again, any opportunities to spend time in the field with them is welcomed, and we do encourage it to show some of the work that we're doing and also exchange ideas and just build out those relationships. There is a new minister of mines and petroleum in country. We had an opportunity to listen to him and meet with representatives at the mining forum that was conducted in July, and certainly that's a relationship that we look forward to continuing to build out and also help shape the future of exploration and mining within the country at that level as well. So it's a very welcoming environment, and I think there's a real opportunity here to help move things forward.
Darin, thank you for that. I think it's very important, even at this early stage, that you guys work those relationships and help out local service provider utilization, community education on the importance of mining. I think that's lacking. I know Adrian and I've talked about this on multiple occasions and on past programs. It's the community education is so much lacking, generally because the governments of every country, for the most part, don't teach about chemistry or mining or the importance of natural resources. You don't learn any of this stuff in school. So it's really important that the private sector has to do this, and obviously the government finally gets on board when they start to see the dollar signs to some effect anyway. So I appreciate the thoughts on that and how you guys are approaching this at a very early stage. Adrian, I'll take your comments here on this as well, but also maybe you can talk a little bit about what you guys see now with the current market conditions and of course the company specific progress, which is good. Any updated plans on listing, and also that overall awareness activities to get the word out about this company and also those exploration results. What are the plans here, Adrian, and expected time frame?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as the last part there that you and Darin were just speaking to, I mean, it really covers it. We have a chance here to be to really shape the way the mineral exploration industry develops in Egypt, to be a key part of that, and to be, really do our best to direct it in a positive way, and that alone is a super exciting opportunity and something that doesn't come along very often, which leads into I think talking about what our plans are and what the real upside is for Red Sea now. And to answer your question, I think, obviously we want to get out and do as much work as we can. We want to be in the field. We want to make sure that the financing that we're raising, money that we're raising, is going into the ground, and that we are advancing this project on the geological front as quickly as we can. We're doing the right thing, which is putting geology first, getting out there, really proving the depth and the breadth of the quality of these geological targets, the ideas that Darin has about how to move them forward, and what his approach is. It's proving very fruitful already, and we're only just getting started. And so, when you look at the plan for the company, it's to keep the work going on in the field, to stay focused at Oasis, to get this round of drilling underway, to do some work at Raw, and of course to eventually get working at Luxor, which is a really phenomenal target, and really to start these things on the right footing, to go into an IPO with these targets already fleshed out and de-risked to as high a degree as we can. And that's a rarity. That's something you don't often see. You don't see companies going forward into an IPO often with anything beyond just a grassroots idea and a concept and maybe a few grab samples here and there. This is different. We've done our work. We've put literally years into this already, and Darin is going in with a fulsome approach to hit these targets properly, to explore them properly and systematically, which has never happened before, but most importantly, in an area where that's never been done. So again, kind of just going back to summarize, I think the real benefits in Egypt. What's the advantage for a company like Red Sea going into a brand new country in a brand new jurisdiction that really, as was just covered in the last point, is still developing? The exploration industry, this is coming on the heels of deregulation in Ethiopia, Eritrea, Sudan, and Saudi Arabia. This is a brand new jurisdiction that has essentially been left untouched because of the previous mining laws in the country, and really the lack of kind of welcoming exploration companies to come in under a system that made sense. And so you have this area that is essentially the last unexplored greenstone belt in the world. And what is that advantage? What bigger picture? What is Red Sea setting out to do? We're setting out to be the first mover in Egypt, to come in behind Sukari, behind the development of Sukari, behind Sentiment's accomplishments there, and to be the first company that comes in and makes a world-class discovery. And there are other players in Egypt. To date, nothing really staggering has been found. Some sniffs here and there, some exciting things. What Darin's doing at Oasis, what Darin's doing at Luxor or Raw, this is the most exciting thing in Egypt today. And that puts us in a position to be the first mover. And, throughout my career, I've seen it time and time and time again. If you're the first mover in a brand new jurisdiction, or even a jurisdiction that's known, you have the chance to capture the lion's share of the market attention. That means much more, market awareness, excitement, and hopefully leads to a better share price once things get underway. But that first mover advantage is huge. And right now we've got that wind in our sails. So that's kind of, I guess, point one in our strategic plan and our advantage. And really, again, I always like to cover the fact that we're working in this greenstone belt that's untouched. You're working in, as Darin covered earlier on in our discussion, greenstone belts are a super important geological environment for big gold discoveries and big regional gold discoveries. And you have here a greenstone belt that is untapped, untouched, totally underexplored, and never been systematically explored. I think Darin probably agreed, the majority of Egypt has never seen a drill hole. There's been some sampling, there's been a little bit of drilling here and there, and of course the development of Sukari, but by and large, the entire country has never seen a drill hole. And if you think about that for a minute and you start to put it into context, you're looking at something that would compare to the Abitibi Greenstone Belt, or the Timmins Gold Camp, or Yilgarn in Australia. And these are the examples I constantly throw out when I'm trying to give this context. Those are massive gold belts. Those are massive gold regions. This is the same. Egypt is the same. And now we're setting out to be at the very forefront of developing these projects in this region. So imagine yourself in a situation where you're developing a greenstone belt 100 years prior to modern exploration, 100 years ago. And that's what you're facing in Egypt. You've got the same potential, the same opportunity in front of you, only we have systematic, modern technology, technological approaches, geological approaches that would never have been in place in places like the Abitibi that years ago. So you've got a brand new belt, modern technology, and a systematic approach to developing it. And we've got prime ground within that belt. So look at the Abitibi. They produce 200 million ounces of gold. There's 124, 125 operating mines. Newmont and Osisko are there. The largest gold mine in Canada is there. That's called Malartic. This is just like that, only we've got the prime ground and it's never been explored. So when you look at Egypt, you have one mine to date, one commercial mine. There are obviously artisanal operations, but you've got one mine to date. So I always go back to, is it feasible that there is 125 operating mines in the Abitibi, but there's not going to be more than one in Egypt? Absolutely not. There's going to be lots of discoveries in Egypt. There's going to be all kinds of excitement and lots of mines and lots of operating mines over the years, and it will produce vast amounts of gold over time. But again, go back to my last point: first mover. That's what's key, and we're in that position now. So when you look at all of those comparisons, whether it's Yilgarn, and you end up with mines like the Super Pit, that's 800,000 ounces of gold a year. Malartic is huge. The Abitibi Greenstone Belt is massive. You have a section alone in Timmins that produced 57 million ounces of gold. That's smaller than what we're doing at Oasis right now. So that's not to say that we have 57 million ounces of gold at Oasis. Maybe we do. We don't know. It's brand new. But what it means is you have the potential for that kind of upside. And that is, maybe once in a lifetime. You never know. This does not happen every day. And it's the only belt like this in the world that still sits there and hasn't yet been explored. And we've got just prime targets waiting to go. So it's really incredible. And I think when you look at the discoveries that we've made and what we have under our belt already, Darin has set us on a path for success. We're ready to go. And that to me is the most exciting thing. And to sum up the strategy, 3 properties, 3 significant discoveries already under our belt, and we're just getting started. But systematically, we're going to go after all 3 and go into the IPO with a big plan with discoveries that are bona fide, drilled and proven and de-risked, so that we can see valuation here that is really significant and sets us on the path to success in Egypt.
Adrian, any rough time you can give us on what you see there as far as when you guys would go to market, given market conditions, given plans in early 25? What do you think?
Our plan, and we really, it's always fluid because we want to take market conditions into account. And there hasn't really been any big rush for us in the sense that we don't have the typical hurdle that most companies do, and their rush to getting to that IPO phase is for access to capital. We haven't been strapped for capital. We have access to capital, and we've been able to move ahead privately. And there's a lot of advantages to that. In a tough market, we've been able to move ahead without having to deal with adverse conditions, raise money at the price we want to, get enough money together to allow Darin to do everything he needs to de-risk these projects. And we've continued to do that, and we're continuing to do that right now. But at the same time, we owe it to our shareholders, and we owe it to everybody involved here that's invested to get this company public. And the goal is to do that within the first 6 months of 2025. So getting this work underway, getting the drilling underway at Oasis and at Raw, and getting that IPO underway in the first 6 months of the year, I think is exactly where we're focused. And I think we're on our path to getting there without any major delays or any major issues in the way.
Makes some good sense here on timing and how you guys plan to have this ready to go, hopefully by mid-2025, as far as a potential listing, as you guys continue to explore the various avenues there and what makes most sense for the company and the shareholders there. Well, guys, why don't we leave it there for now? Of course, any final comments here? I'll leave you with these final questions. Thanks again for the time. For potential investors who are listening in, the company has a market capitalization of about, let's call it about 20 million Canadian dollars at this point. Why should Red Sea Resources be considered within the institutional, family office, and retail investors portfolio at this stage? Darin, why don't you take a quick shot at that, and then we'll let Adrian finish up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of things we've talked about on this call. It's at the end of the day, though, it's about the geology. All the right ingredients are in place at all three of our licenses. We've got the potential to make a discovery. We're not dealing with the challenges that you see in other environments. We're not the fifth company to hold these licenses. We're not looking at something that's undercover and requires a little bit more expensive and innovative techniques to potentially define something. We're looking at bona fide structure on the ground. We're looking at alteration. We're looking at mineralization, and we're turning results with the work that we've done thus far. We're private right now. We're small. We have the capital to move the projects forward. We've got drill programs laid out and ready to go. So I think that at the end of the day, that's why investors should be interested in what we're doing and engaged with Red Sea. It's that opportunity to make a discovery in one of the rare remaining places in the world where that work just hasn't been done. So I think it really is the geology at the end of the day.
And Adrian, just any follow-up comments to what Darin had there, and of course, what the best way is for folks to reach out to the company for more information.
The reality here is we're leading the way with geology. We're putting the requisite amount of work in to de-risk this and to put it forth on real targets, real discoveries, and significant discoveries at that. And so letting geology lead the way, letting Darin do what he does best, and he's doing an absolutely knockout job of it at this point. So, it's exciting. It's the right way forward. And why should people be interested? Exactly what Darin said. This is the chance to be involved in something that is brand new, exciting, a new district, a jurisdiction that's welcoming, easy to work in, and still developing as we go. So we get a chance to shape the direction this goes as we develop these targets. So, but most importantly, great geology, high grade, great discoveries, and we've got an analog. The analog is Sukari. We know that the majors want to be there. We know that there's a few majors already working in the country and trying to develop assets. But Anglo's move to taking out Sukari, taking out Centamin, is the analog to what can be done in Egypt with success. And we're in line for that first mover advantage here to do that and hopefully put ourselves in a position, to develop something that is worthy of the same kind of attention over time. So super exciting at this point. And in terms of getting in touch, I think the easiest way is probably to reach out to me directly. Best number to use or best contact to use is always my email address, which is aobrien, AOBRIEN, at redsearesources.com. Or anybody can give me a call anytime. And that number is 604, it's Vancouver area code, of course, 604-809-6890. Either of those methods will get a hold of me, and happy to talk to anybody anytime. And if there's anyone with interest in the financing, of course, they can contact us at that same number and email address as well. And happy to connect anytime with anyone that has interest in Red Sea.
Darin, Adrian, thank you very much for updating on the company. Appreciate the progress here. Looking forward to seeing more progress in the coming months. Best of luck to you guys, and we'll be in touch again soon.
Thanks so much, Andrew. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to speaking in the future and bringing some of the latest from Red Sea and Egypt.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, looking forward to it as well. And hopefully next time we chat, we'll have some new exciting results from all this hard work Darin's about to go and attack in the field.